All right, so today we're talking about the War for Texas Independence, the declaration of an independent republic in Texas. Okay. All right, I'm going to do my best with this. You probably know more about this than I do. Okay, but I'm going to do my best. All right, so look. So the settlement of Texas, here it comes. It's starting in the 1820s. You've got Stephen Austin and his buddy Erasmo Seguin, but they're coming across. Anyway, Stephen Austin is the name you know, but they're coming across into Texas. Okay, at the time, Texas is controlled as part of the Spanish Empire, as was Mexico. Right. A few months after Austin comes into Texas territory, the Mexico is recognized as independent by Spain, and this was kind of the culmination of a long fight for independence on the part of Mexico. If we remember all the way back to the Napoleonic Wars, when Napoleon had put his brother on the throne of Spain and caused a rebellion in Spain, a lot of the Latin American countries decided, hey, look, we don't owe fealty, we don't owe loyalty to Napoleon's brother, so we're going to declare So anyway, this long independence movement is won by Mexico in 1821, okay? And Mexico starts to encourage Americans to migrate into Texas territory, all right? Primarily because it's an economic benefit to them. These Americans are going to cultivate land that is not currently in use, okay? They're also, these Americans are providing what are called a benefit in terms of fighting the Comanche Indians in the region who are hostile to the Mexicans as well as the Americans. Okay, so they're providing certain benefits, which is why the Mexican government was welcoming them in. Okay, and Austin would act kind of as the negotiator, as the mediator between the Mexican government and the Americans. Okay, and he brought in 1,500 families into Texas in the 1820s. All right. Now, a problem started to arise pretty quickly in that the Mexican government, which they established themselves in a constitution in 1824, and then in 1829, they outlaw slavery. And this is kind of one of the problems because, of course, the American settlers have slaves. And Austin himself doesn't like slavery, but he does defend, so to speak, the settlers' ability to have, legal ability to have slaves. And they're kind of just ignoring the federal government's saying, in the federal government, the Mexican government saying you can't have slaves, okay? And that's kind of one problem that happens. And then the Mexican government also starts to get nervous about the same time as they're outlawing slavery because you've got more and more Americans migrating into Texas. And they vastly outnumber the amount of families migrating up from central Mexico or from Europe. And this Mexican government had hoped to attract immigrants from all over the place, not just America. And so they look like, okay, now the main population up here in Texas are these former Americans, and they're nervous, right, that the American government is, going to try to annex Texas, right? And what happened to Florida with Spain is going to happen with Texas. That's what they're afraid of. Okay, so they start to try to limit immigration to Mexico from the United States. And they actually say no more Americans can come into Mexico after 1830. They suspend United States immigration. And Austin is able to, negotiate with them and get people to come in through his contacts and whatever. But overall, largely it's suspended. But they can't enforce it, right? So you've got all sorts of illegal immigration, all these illegal immigrants coming from the United States into Mexico, okay? And the Mexican government is kind of faced with this big problem of what do we do with these illegal immigrants here? Okay, well, they decide, look, we're just gonna have to Austin essentially negotiates with the Mexican parliament and gets them to overturn the earlier ruling so that U.S. immigration can go on. Okay. So by 1836, which is the year in which the Texas War of Independence is going to be fought, you have 35,000 families of American origin, or white people, in Texas. Okay, and of course they have slaves also, and you also have some Hispanic people, Spanish-speaking people living in Texas, but they're vastly outnumbered by the Anglo-speaking people. Okay, all right. Now, we dealt a little bit with Austin. The other thing that's going to happen, giving rise to the war, is the rise of this guy Santa Anna, General Santa Anna, and he rose to prominence in 1829 because he had successfully defended Mexico against an invasion from Spain. Okay, and then he has himself elected, or he is elected president in 1833, and people thought he was going to promote more of a kind of liberal agenda, liberal in the sense of modeled on, classical liberalism, which emphasizes individual freedom, economic freedom, property rights, those sorts of things, and would be kind of modeled on the United States government. That's what they thought Santa Anna would do, but he switches sides and he becomes this like kind of very conservative person once he's in power. And then he goes even farther, or just off the deep end entirely, not even conservative, but just off the rails, and declares himself a dictator. Okay, and there were these rebellions that spring up throughout Mexico, one of which will be in Texas, but in more like central Mexico, these rebellions are springing up, and he suppresses them pretty brutally, okay? And so he develops a very nasty reputation, even within central Mexico, for his, reports about what he does with these rebels in central Mexico. Okay, all right. All right, so the next little bit of lecture we'll get into the origins of the War of Independence more particularly.